We all know what Wack100 is known for. All his extortions and finessing rapper have been exposed. And today, we're about to dive into how he finessed each one of these rappers with some paying 70% of their revenue to him. What's good? It's your boy Hip-Hop History, and today we're about to expose one of the most calculated schemes in hip-hop. Just imagine this. While you're watching your favorite rappers flex on Instagram, posting pictures of chains, cars, and cash, there's a man behind the scenes collecting checks that would make your head spin. We're talking about Wack100, a street-smart predator who turned artist management into a masterclass of financial manipulation, walking away with millions while leaving some of rap's biggest names counting pennies. This isn't just another industry story about bad contracts or greedy executives. This is about a man who weaponized his street credibility, targeting young, hungry artists at their most vulnerable moments and trapping them in deals so predatory they'd make a payday loan company jealous.
And told him they was gonna get him an attorney and do these things. And I'm thinking Max B gonna get out, forget about him.
Blueface, The Game, Ray J, and countless others fell victim to contracts so one-sided, they redefined what it means to get played in the music business. We're talking about a man who built a multi-million-dollar empire, not by creating music, not by discovering talent, but by creating financial dependency. While his artists grind 24/7, performing show after show, dropping track after track, Wack100 sits back collecting 70% of everything they earn. That's not management, that's legalized robbery with a business license. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how Wack100 turned the American dream into a financial nightmare for the artists who trusted him. You'll see the receipts, hear the confessions from industry insiders, and witness how one man's street smarts became the music industry's most profitable con game. We're going to break down the contracts, expose the manipulation tactics, and show you why some of your favorite rappers are working harder than ever but staying broke. So buckle up, because this story gets darker with every signature, more twisted with every handshake, and more expensive with every deal.
We're gonna deal with it how we gotta deal with it. Next morning, we got a bail a bond, and they made me, I had to get him a place out there.
This is how Wack100 finessed rappers for millions, and why the hip-hop community is finally waking up to the biggest scam in music business history. Before we dive into the finessing, let's talk about who Wack100 really is and how he transformed from street soldier to music industry manipulator. Born Cash Jones in Pacoima, California, this man didn't start his journey in boardrooms or recording studios. He came from the concrete jungle of Los Angeles, where he built his reputation as a member of the Treetop Piru Bloods, one of the most notorious sets in the city. But here's where Wack100's story gets interesting.
It's starting to happen what we seen happen. People that think they're bigger than the program or bigger than what they are, right?
While most street dudes were focused on territory, respect, and immediate gratification, Wack100 was studying a different game entirely. He was watching how the music industry operated, learning the language of contracts and percentages, understanding how managers and labels extracted wealth from artists who created all the value. He realized something that most gang members never figure out. The real money isn't in the streets, it's in the contracts. Wack100's transformation wasn't accidental, it was calculated. He understood that his street background could become his greatest business asset if he played it right, while traditional music executives had to build credibility with artists over time.
They negotiate what they negotiate, they draw up their paperwork, right? He never one time talks to Oscar De La Hoya, right? There's never conversation between the two.
Wack100 already had something more valuable, authentic street credibility that couldn't be bought or faked. Artists from similar backgrounds would automatically trust him in ways they'd never trust a suit-wearing executive from Beverly Hills. The genius of his approach was keeping one foot in each world. He maintained his street connections, his reputation in the hood, his credibility with gang-affiliated artists, but he also studied the business side with the intensity of someone preparing for war. He learned contract law, understood revenue streams.
Right, so the minute you get attorneys involved, see if you have something, right? That's yours. It's yours. And you got the consent to have it.
Mastered the art of negotiation, and most importantly, he figured out how to identify and exploit psychological vulnerabilities in young artists. By the early 2000s, Wack100 had positioned himself perfectly. He had the street credibility to gain artists' trust instantly, the business knowledge to structure deals in his favor, and the ruthless mindset to prioritize profit over everything else. When artists looked at him, they didn't see a predatory executive trying to exploit them. They saw someone who understood their world, someone who had walked their path, someone who would protect them from the industry sharks. That perception became his greatest weapon and their biggest mistake. Because while Wack100 was busy convincing artists that he was protecting them from predators, he was actually the biggest predator in the room. He just wore his predatory nature like a badge of honor, calling it street smarts and business acumen. Conservative estimates put Wack100's current net worth at around $3 million, but industry insiders suggest the real number could be significantly higher when you factor in his various business ventures, real estate investments, and the percentage cuts he's been collecting for years. Every dollar of that wealth came from the same playbook: identify vulnerable talent, gain their trust through cultural connection, lock them into predatory deals, and profit while they struggle to understand what happened to their money. The most disturbing part? Wack100 has never hidden his methods. He talks openly about taking large percentages. He brags about his deal-making abilities. He positions his exploitation as business expertise. He's built his entire public persona around being the street-smart businessman who outsmarts naive artists. And somehow, artists keep lining up to work with him. The Blueface. Finesse. A masterclass in psychological manipulation. 630 to 1600. Let's start with perhaps Wack100's most documented and disturbing finesse, the Blueface situation. This case study reveals everything you need to know about how Wack100 operates, why his methods are so effective against young artists, and how he turns vulnerability into profit. Picture this. It's late 2018 and Blueface is just starting to explode onto the hip-hop scene. Though is gaining serious traction on social media, the internet is buzzing about this new West Coast rapper with the unconventional offbeat flow, and everyone in the industry is scrambling to figure out who this kid is and how to get a piece of his potential success. Record labels are making calls, managers are reaching out, and the feeding frenzy is beginning. But Blueface wasn't just any emerging artist. He was exactly what Wack100 specialized in exploiting. He was young, maybe 21 years old, coming straight from the streets of Los Angeles with zero knowledge about the music business. He had raw talent, viral potential, and most importantly, he had no idea what his career could be worth or how to protect himself from predatory deals. He was a perfect target.
Excuse me, man, like, would you insist on your son signing this right here? Like, if I was your son, would you recommend this?
Now here's where Wack100's street intelligence and psychological manipulation skills come into full display. He didn't approach Blueface through traditional industry channels like other executives were doing. He didn't send professional emails, have his assistant make polite phone calls, or arrange meetings through proper representatives. Instead, he started blowing up Blueface's phone directly, using his extensive street connections to get the personal number that other industry people couldn't access. But here's the crucial detail that shows how calculated Wack100's approach was. Blueface wasn't answering those calls. Why? Because despite being young and inexperienced in business, Blueface understood street politics perfectly. He knew Wack100's reputation in Los Angeles gang culture, and as a member of the Crips, he wasn't trying to do business with someone affiliated with the Bloods. The gang rivalry that had shaped both their lives was initially protecting Blueface from Wack100's manipulation.
I signed at that time. That was like my confirmation.
No lawyer, no nothing.
No lawyer, no nothing.
This is where most people would give up and move on to easier targets. But Wack100 isn't most people. He understood that persistence and psychological pressure could overcome initial resistance, especially when dealing with someone young and impressionable. He kept calling day after day, week after week, making it clear through mutual connections that this was about business opportunities, not street politics. He positioned himself as someone who could separate business from gang affiliations when there was serious money involved. The psychological warfare was subtle but relentless. Wack100 wasn't just calling. He was having other people call on his behalf, creating a sense that everyone in Blueface's circle thought he should take the meeting. He was building social pressure while maintaining the appearance of being respectful and patient. After weeks of this coordinated campaign, Blueface finally picked up the phone. The conversation was brief, but Wack100 made every word count. He didn't waste time with small talk or lengthy explanations. He told Blueface directly that he had something that could change his life forever, that he'd seen Blueface's potential and wanted to help him capitalize on it properly. But instead of asking Blueface to come to his office like a traditional business meeting, Wack100 made a power move that revealed his understanding of street psychology. He sent a black luxury truck to pick Blueface up personally.
Like, I'm not a big fan.
Like going viral?
No. I'm not a big fan of flashing the money. Like, if you go to my store, you never see me flash money.
Think about the psychology behind this gesture. A young rapper from the hood sees an expensive vehicle pull up specifically for him, with a driver who treats him like he's already a star. It's not just transportation, it's a preview of the lifestyle being offered. It's a demonstration of resources and respect that immediately elevates Blueface's perception of his own value and Wack100's capabilities. When Blueface arrived at Wack100's house, the psychological manipulation went into overdrive. This wasn't just a nice house. This was a mansion that screamed success at every turn. Pool area with expensive furniture, luxury cars in the driveway, high-end electronics, designer everything. For a young man who had grown up struggling financially, seeing this level of wealth was intoxicating and overwhelming. But Wack100 didn't just let the house speak for itself. He walked Blueface through every room, making sure he saw every symbol of success, every indication of the lifestyle that could be his. He talked about how the music business had been good to him, how artists who worked with him were able to afford similar lifestyles, how this could all be Blueface's reality if he made the right decisions. The tour wasn't random, it was choreographed. Wack100 made sure Blueface saw the home studio where other successful artists had recorded, the office where million-dollar deals had been negotiated, the garage full of luxury vehicles that represented the fruits of smart business decisions. Every stop on the tour was designed to build desire and create urgency. But here's the most calculated and disturbing part of the whole setup. Wack100 had the contract already printed and waiting on the dining room table. Not in his office, not in a briefcase, not in a folder marked business documents. The contract was laid out on the family dining table like it was a dinner invitation surrounded by the trappings of domestic success and family wealth. The message was crystal clear. This isn't a negotiation, this is an opportunity. This isn't a business transaction, this is a family invitation. This isn't something you need to think about, this is something you need to act on immediately before the opportunity disappears. Blueface, overwhelmed by everything he was seeing and feeling the pressure of the moment, asked the one question that would seal his fate forever. He turned to Wack100's wife, who had been present during parts of the house tour, and asked her directly, "If I was your son, would you tell me to sign this contract?"
When he asked me if I was your son, would you have me sign this contract? And I said, yes.
Without hesitation, without qualification, without suggesting he read it first or consult a lawyer, she looked him in the eye and said yes. That endorsement from a woman, from a mother figure, from someone who appeared to have no direct financial stake in the decision, was the final piece of psychological manipulation Blueface needed to hear. And just like that, without reading the contract, without consulting a lawyer, without understanding what he was agreeing to, without negotiating any terms, Blueface signed his financial future away. The contract wasn't just bad, it was predatory on a level that would make payday loan companies jealous. Here's where DJ Academics enters the story and exposes the whole scheme to the public. According to Academics, who obtained and analyzed the actual contract details, Wack100 didn't just sign Blueface to his label for a standard percentage. He structured the deal to maximize his own profit while minimizing Blueface's earnings in ways that bordered on financial abuse. The contract gave Wack100's label 50% of all of Blueface's music revenue. Already an extremely high percentage for a new artist with viral potential, but that was just the beginning. Wack100 also made himself Blueface's exclusive manager, which meant another 20% cut of everything Blueface earned. Think about the mathematics here. Wack100 was taking 70% of everything Blueface made, leaving the actual artist with 30% of his own work. But the exploitation went even deeper. The contract wasn't limited to just music revenue. Wack100 structured the deal to include touring income, merchandise sales, endorsement deals, appearance fees, social media monetization, everything. Every single dollar that Blueface's name, face, or talent could generate had to flow through Wack100 first, and 70 cents of every dollar stayed with Wack100. For an artist who was just starting to see real money for the first time in his life, this meant working harder and harder while seeing less and less actual profit. If Blueface wanted to put $100,000 in his own pocket, he needed to generate over $330,000 in total revenue. That level of constant hustle becomes exhausting and unsustainable, but stopping means financial collapse. The genius of Wack100's approach was that he made it seem like he was doing Blueface a favor. He positioned himself as the street-smart businessman who could navigate the industry's complexities, the protector who would shield.
We keep having these hearings, and you guys don't have any new paperwork for me to violate this person.
Blueface from the real sharks in the music business. In reality, he was the biggest shark in the water, and he had just convinced his prey to swim directly into his mouth. When the contract details became public through DJ Academic's reporting, the hip-hop community was genuinely shocked. Industry veterans, many of whom had seen their share of bad deals, called it one of the most predatory contracts they'd ever encountered. Entertainment lawyers pointed out that the terms were so one-sided that they bordered on unconscionable and might not even be legally enforceable in some jurisdictions. But for Blueface, the public exposure came too late. He was already locked into the deal, already dependent on Wack100's system, already trapped in a cycle where he had to work constantly just to maintain his lifestyle. Getting out would require expensive legal battles that could drag on for years and cost more than the contract was worth. This is the Wack100 playbook in its purest form. Identify young talent with viral potential, overwhelm them with displays of wealth and lifestyle, create psychological pressure through cultural connections, eliminate opportunities for outside counsel or reflection, and lock them into deals that generate millions for him while keeping them dependent and financially struggling. Blueface was just the beginning, and the blueprint was now proven to work. If the Blueface situation demonstrated Wack100's ability to manipulate inexperienced artists, the game situation revealed something even more sinister and sophisticated: his willingness and ability to steal established artists from legitimate management companies using nothing but street politics, intimidation, and psychological manipulation. The game wasn't some naive young artist when Wack100 entered his orbit. He was already an established name in hip-hop with multiple successful albums, industry connections, and professional management. He had a team in place, systems that were working, and the kind of career infrastructure that most artists spend years trying to build. But Wack100 saw an opportunity, and when Wack100 identifies an opportunity, existing contracts and professional courtesy become completely irrelevant. The situation began when the game was experiencing some typical friction with his existing management team.
I started managing an artist named Stacey Adams. Right. That day I left, I didn't leave with a phone number, I didn't leave with nothing on him. I started managing an artist named Stacey Adams, and I'm thinking, you know what, I could use a game feature.
This wasn't unusual. The relationship between artists and management is always complex, involving creative differences, financial disagreements, and personality conflicts. The game's management wasn't perfect, and there were probably some legitimate issues around booking strategies, communication problems, and the usual industry politics that create tension between artists and their representatives. But instead of the game working through these issues professionally or seeking mediation, Wack100 positioned himself as the solution to problems that weren't really that serious. He began reaching out to the game directly, completely bypassing his existing management and violating every principle of professional courtesy that governs the music industry. Here's how the psychological manipulation began. Wack100 used their shared blood affiliation as the foundation for trust and connection. He positioned himself as someone who understood the game's world in ways that his current management, who were probably industry professionals without street backgrounds, never could.
I get a call from Briss, me and the man that just left, Lil Jon, had just met. We at the Four Seasons on Doheny. I'm up there with Suge, Lil Jon pull up, him and Zap. I've been Zap for you there. Briss called me, tell me, G-Unit got him blocked in at the Hyatt on Sunset.
This wasn't about business expertise, industry connections, or proven track records. This was about cultural identity and gang politics. The manipulation was subtle but incredibly effective. Wack100 started by simply being available when the game needed to vent about his management frustrations. He positioned himself as a sympathetic ear, someone who understood the unique challenges that street-affiliated artists face in the corporate music industry. He validated the game's complaints and gradually planted seeds of doubt about whether his current team really had his best interests at heart.
If you still doing it, if you ever read the book Visions for Black Men?
No, I ain't read that one.
Y'all check it out. It's a 110-page book by Naomi Akbar. This is the book that really made me check myself. Because if you would have told me, what was in this book.
But Wack100 didn't stop at just listening and sympathizing. He started taking action on the game's behalf, booking shows and handling negotiations without any official authority or paperwork. He was essentially acting as the game's manager while the game still had a management company under contract. This created a parallel power structure that undermined the legitimate management team while making Wack100 appear more effective and responsive. The booking strategy was particularly calculated. Wack100 focused on getting the game high-profile, well-paying gigs that his existing management might not have been able to secure. This created the impression that Wack100 was more connected, more effective, and more capable of maximizing the game's earning potential. What the game didn't realize was that Wack100 was taking significant percentages of these bookings without any formal agreement.
We represent, I believe it was like Czar Entertainment or something, something like that. Tony Martin and Brother Delaney.
Essentially stealing commissions from work he had no legal right to be involved in. When the game's legitimate management discovered what was happening, they were understandably furious. They had contracts, they had legal standing, they had invested time and resources into building the game's career, and now someone was interfering with their business relationship and stealing their commissions. They called Wack100 directly, demanding that he stop interfering with their artist and respect their contractual rights. But Wack100's response revealed everything you need to know about how he operates and why traditional industry professionals are often powerless against his methods. According to multiple industry sources who were familiar with the situation, Wack100 told the game's management straight up that he wasn't hearing any of their complaints or recognizing any of their authority. His exact words were reportedly something like, "Y'all not finna tell me what a blood can do with another blood. This is family business, and y'all don't have no say in family business." He turned a straightforward business dispute into a street politics issue, making it clear that he didn't recognize their contracts, their professional standing, or their legal rights when it came to someone he considered part of his street family. This response reveals the genius and the danger of Wack100's approach. The game's management were industry professionals who operated in boardrooms, resolved conflicts through lawyers and contracts, and expected business relationships to be governed by professional standards and legal agreements. But Wack100 was operating by street rules where respect, reputation, and cultural connections matter more than paperwork.
I got people I call that I get around, like in New York too, motherfucking boroughy.
The game's management found themselves in a situation they weren't equipped to handle. They could threaten legal action, but that would be expensive and time-consuming. They could try to reason with the game directly, but Wack100 had already positioned himself as the more culturally authentic option. They could try to compete by offering better terms or services, but Wack100 wasn't competing on professional merit. He was competing on cultural identity and street credibility. The game, caught in the middle of this conflict, made the decision that would cost him millions of dollars over the following years. Instead of honoring his contractual obligations and maintaining his professional relationships, he chose to go with Wack100. The street connection, the promise of better bookings, the appeal of working with someone who understood him culturally, it all seemed more attractive than dealing with industry politics and professional obligations. But here's what the game didn't realize at the time, and what makes this situation so tragic. His previous management was actually doing a significantly better job than Wack100 ever would. Under his old management, the game was working less frequently but making more money per engagement. The bookings were strategic, designed to build his brand and maximize his long-term earning potential. The deals were structured for sustainable success rather than quick cash grabs. Under Wack100's management, the game found himself on a completely different trajectory. He was working constantly. More shows, more appearances, more promotional activities, more hustle. The schedule was relentless, and the activity level made it seem like his career was more successful than ever. But the money wasn't adding up the way it should have been.
When you go to talk about people putting tickets on people's heads, right? This ain't back in the 70s or the 80s, right? Unfortunately, the streets is bad.
Why? Because Wack100 was taking his 50% cut off the top of everything, plus additional percentages for various services and expenses. The game was working twice as hard to make roughly the same amount of money he was making before, but he didn't realize it immediately because the constant activity and hustle felt more authentic, more connected to his street identity and work ethic. This is the psychological trap that Wack100 sets for all his artists. He makes them feel like they're winning because they're staying busy, because they're working with someone who understands their culture, because they're constantly in motion. But while they're feeling good about the relationship and the activity level, he's systematically extracting wealth from every aspect of their career. The game situation also revealed another crucial aspect of Wack100's operation, his willingness to use intimidation and street politics to eliminate legitimate competition. When professional business people tried to protect their contractual rights and financial interests, Wack100 made it clear that he wasn't operating by business rules or professional standards. He was operating by street rules, and in that environment, contracts and professional courtesy don't matter. Only power, reputation, and cultural connections matter. For other management companies in the hip-hop industry, the game situation sent a chilling message. If you have an artist that Wack100 wants, and that artist has any connection to his street network or cultural background, your contracts might not be worth the paper they're printed on. It established a precedent that showed how street politics could completely override legitimate business relationships in the hip-hop industry. The long-term consequences for the game were severe. He ended up working significantly more while building less wealth, trapped in a system designed to benefit Wack100 at his expense. By the time he realized what had happened, he was already dependent on Wack100's booking network and financial system, making it extremely difficult and expensive to leave. The Ray J situation represents a different and perhaps more insidious aspect of Wack100's operation. What happens when a relationship starts legitimately but gradually transforms into exploitation? Unlike Blueface in the game, Ray J came to Wack100 as an established entertainment industry veteran with decades of experience, multiple successful business ventures, and sophisticated understanding of how the industry operates. He wasn't naive, he wasn't desperate, and he wasn't easily manipulated. But Wack100 found ways to exploit him anyway, revealing the depth and sophistication of his predatory methods. Initially, the relationship between Ray J and Wack100 appeared to be genuinely mutually beneficial. Ray J needed management that could handle both his music career and his broader entertainment business interests. He was involved in multiple ventures: music, television, technology startups, fashion, and needed someone who could coordinate these various activities while understanding the unique challenges of managing a celebrity brand. Wack100 positioned himself as exactly what Ray J needed. He presented himself as someone who understood both the creative side of the entertainment industry and the business side, someone who could handle complex negotiations while maintaining the street credibility that was important to Ray J's brand. For the first period of their relationship, this positioning seemed accurate. Ray J was getting booked for high-profile appearances, his various business ventures were being promoted effectively, and his overall brand was being managed professionally. The relationship seemed to be working exactly as it should. Ray J was making money, Wack100 was earning his management fees, and both parties appeared satisfied with the arrangement. But as time progressed, Wack100's true nature and priorities began to emerge. Instead of focusing on Ray J's actual career development and long-term brand building, Wack100 became increasingly obsessed with generating quick money from Ray J's past controversies and personal history. Specifically, he became fixated on Ray J's history with Kim Kardashian and the infamous intimate tape that had launched both of their careers into the stratosphere years earlier. Here's where the situation becomes really problematic and reveals Wack100's willingness to exploit his clients' personal lives for profit. Wack100 started making public claims that he had access to additional unreleased footage from Ray J and Kim Kardashian's past relationship. Whether these claims were true or completely fabricated didn't matter to Wack100. What mattered was that the claims could generate massive media attention and, more importantly, massive paydays through interviews, appearances, and media deals. Ray J was in a completely different place in his life by this point. He had evolved far beyond the young man who had been involved in those early controversies. He was now a father, a husband, a legitimate businessman focused on technology ventures and family life. He was actively trying to move past the tabloid drama that had defined his early career and build a more mature, respectable public image. The last thing Ray J wanted was to be dragged back into tabloid drama, especially drama involving someone who had become one of the most famous and powerful people in the world. Kim Kardashian was now a billionaire businesswoman with massive cultural influence, and Ray J understood that rehashing their past relationship would be professionally damaging and personally embarrassing for both of them. But Wack100 saw dollar signs and media opportunities. He started making increasingly bold public statements about this alleged additional footage, suggesting that it could be released, hinting at its contents, and generally creating a media frenzy around something that Ray J wanted nothing to do with. He appeared on podcasts, gave interviews, and made social media posts, all designed to generate attention and monetize Ray J's past controversies. Ray J's response was swift and public. He called Wack100's behavior not cool and made it clear that this kind of exploitation didn't align with his personal growth, his family values, or his image as a father and businessman. He publicly distanced himself from any plans to release additional footage and emphasized his desire to move forward rather than backward. The conflict revealed the fundamental difference in their priorities and values. Ray J was thinking about his long-term reputation, his family's privacy, his children's future, and his legacy as a businessman and entertainer. Wack100 was thinking about immediate profit opportunities, regardless of the personal cost to his client or the long-term damage to Ray J's carefully cultivated mature image. This pattern, Wack100 prioritizing short-term profit over his client's long-term interests, defines all of his relationships with artists. When there's a choice between what's best for the artist and what's most profitable for Wack100, he chooses the money every single time, regardless of the consequences for the people who trust him with their careers. The situation became even more complicated and revealing when Wack100 started making public claims about Ray J's street affiliations and background. In various interviews and podcast appearances, Wack100 suggested that Ray J was affiliated with the mob Peru Bloods, presenting this alleged gang connection as part of Ray J's authentic street credibility. Ray J's response to these claims was immediate and emphatic. In a Vlad TV interview, he strongly denied any gang affiliations and pushed back hard against Wack100's characterizations of his background and identity. He emphasized his focus on family, professionalism, and legitimate business ventures rather than street politics or gang culture. This public disagreement was significant because it showed that not all artists are willing to let Wack100 control their narrative or exploit their backgrounds for his benefit. Unlike younger, less experienced artists who might go along with whatever their manager says publicly, Ray J had enough industry experience, personal confidence, and financial independence to publicly contradict Wack100's statements about him. But the damage was already done. By the time Ray J was publicly contradicting Wack100's claims and distancing himself from the controversy, the stories were already circulating in the media. The attention had already been generated, and Wack100 had already profited from the drama. Ray J was left to clean up the mess, redirect attention back to his legitimate business ventures, and repair any damage to his carefully cultivated professional image. The Ray J situation illustrates several crucial aspects of how Wack100 operates, even with experienced artists who should theoretically know better. First, he identifies and exploits whatever vulnerabilities or controversial elements exist in an artist's background, regardless of how the artist feels about revisiting those issues. Second, he uses public statements and media appearances to create controversy and attention that he can monetize even when his clients explicitly oppose these tactics. Third, he prioritizes his own profit opportunities over his clients' personal wishes, family considerations, and long-term career interests. Perhaps most importantly, the Ray J situation shows how Wack100 uses his clients' backgrounds and personal histories as commodities to be bought and sold in the media marketplace. He doesn't see Ray J's past relationship with Kim Kardashian as a private matter that should be respected. He sees it as a revenue stream that should be maximized. He doesn't see Ray J's desire to move past old controversies as a legitimate personal choice. He sees it as an obstacle to profit that should be overcome. The psychological manipulation involved in the Ray J situation was more subtle than what he used with younger artists, but it was equally calculated. Wack100 positioned himself as someone who could help Ray J monetize his fame and history more effectively, someone who understood the value of controversy and attention in the modern media landscape. He made it seem like Ray J was leaving money on the table by not capitalizing on his past, and that Wack100's willingness to create controversy was actually a form of business expertise. In reality, Wack100 was damaging Ray J's carefully built mature image and forcing him into public controversies that served Wack100's interests rather than Ray J's. The relationship that had started as legitimate management gradually transformed into exploitation, with Wack100 using Ray J's name, history, and reputation to generate profit for himself while creating problems and embarrassment for his client. While Blueface, The Game, and Ray J represent the most documented and publicized examples of Wack100's predatory practices, they're far from the only artists who have fallen victim to his systematic exploitation. The reality is that Wack100 has built an entire business model around identifying and exploiting vulnerable artists, and his roster of victims extends far beyond these high-profile cases. One of the most disturbing aspects of researching Wack100's operation is discovering how many artists have had similar experiences but haven't spoken publicly about their situations. Some are still under contract and legally prohibited from discussing their deals. Others are embarrassed about being manipulated and don't want to admit publicly that they were taken advantage of. Still others are afraid of retaliation or concerned about damaging their careers by speaking out against someone with Wack100's reputation and connections. The pattern is always the same, regardless of the specific artist involved. Wack100 identifies artists who are either inexperienced, dissatisfied with their current situation, or facing some kind of personal or professional crisis.
Sends me to state prison, so when I get to Delano to the reception, I barely got a mustache, I ain't got no goatee, nothing, right? But everybody asking everybody where they from.
He uses his street credibility and cultural connections to build trust quickly, bypassing the normal due diligence process that should govern business relationships. He overwhelms them with displays of wealth and lifestyle, creating desire and urgency around the opportunities he's offering. Once he has their attention and interest, he structures deals that heavily favor his interests while making the artists feel like they're getting opportunities they couldn't access elsewhere. The contracts are complex, heavily weighted toward his benefit, and designed to create long-term dependency rather than short-term profit for the artists. Several industry insiders have described a consistent pattern in how Wack100 approaches potential clients. He doesn't wait for artists to come to him. He actively hunts for vulnerable targets. He monitors social media for signs of artist dissatisfaction with their current management.
Wack100 and managed by Wack100. Let me tell you how this works. When you sign to a label, they take at least half already. Then you're getting managed by the guy who owns the label.
He pays attention to industry gossip about which artists are having financial problems or career difficulties. He maintains a network of contacts who alert him to potential opportunities. When he identifies a target, his approach is always culturally specific and psychologically calculated. For artists with gang affiliations, he emphasizes their shared street background and cultural understanding. For young artists, he focuses on lifestyle demonstration and the promise of quick success. For established artists facing career challenges, he positions himself as the solution to their specific problems. The financial terms of his deals are consistently predatory, but he's skilled at making them seem reasonable or even generous in the moment. He focuses on the immediate benefits, the advance money, the lifestyle improvements, the booking opportunities, while downplaying or obscuring the long-term costs. Artists often don't realize how much they're actually giving up until they've been working under his system for months or years. One particularly disturbing aspect of Wack100's operation is how he uses his existing roster of artists to recruit new victims. Artists who are already trapped in his system are often pressured to help him recruit their friends and associates. This creates a pyramid-like structure where victims become unwilling participants in the exploitation of others. The psychological manipulation extends beyond just the initial contract negotiations. Once artists are locked into his system, Wack100 maintains control through a combination of financial dependency, social pressure, and strategic isolation from outside advisors. Artists become dependent on his booking network, his industry connections, and his financial systems, making it extremely difficult to leave even when they realize they're being exploited. He also uses public relations and media manipulation to control his artists' narratives and maintain his own reputation. When artists try to speak out about their experiences or seek help from outside sources, Wack100 often responds with public attacks on their credibility, their professionalism, or their character. This creates a chilling effect that discourages other artists from speaking out about their own experiences. The impact on the broader hip-hop community has been significant. Wack100's success has inspired other predatory managers and executives to adopt similar tactics. His methods have become normalized in certain segments of the industry, creating an environment where exploitation is seen as standard business practice rather than predatory behavior. Young artists entering the industry often lack the knowledge and resources needed to protect themselves from these tactics. They see Wack100's success and assume that his methods must be legitimate and effective. They don't understand the long-term costs of the deals he offers, and they don't have access to the legal and financial advice needed to make informed decisions. The situation is made worse by the fact that many of the traditional gatekeepers and protective mechanisms in the music industry have been weakened or eliminated by technological and economic changes. Record labels, which once provided some protection and guidance for new artists, are now less involved in artist development and more focused on short-term profit extraction. Professional management companies are competing with street-affiliated operators like Wack100 who don't follow traditional industry standards or ethical guidelines. After examining multiple cases and patterns in Wack100's operation, what emerges is not random opportunistic exploitation, but a sophisticated and systematic business model designed to extract maximum value from artists while giving them minimum control over their own careers and financial futures. This isn't just bad management or aggressive business practices. This is a carefully constructed system of financial predation that has generated millions of dollars in profit while leaving a trail of exploited artists in its wake. The foundation of Wack100's approach is vulnerability, identification, and exploitation. He has developed an almost scientific approach to identifying artists who are susceptible to his manipulation tactics. Young artists with viral potential but no industry experience like Blueface represent one category of target. Established artists who are dissatisfied with their current management like The Game represent another. Artists facing personal or professional crises who need immediate solutions represent a third category. For each category of target, Wack100 has developed specific approaches and tactics. With young artists, he focuses on lifestyle demonstration and the promise of quick success. He overwhelms them with displays of wealth and creates urgency around the opportunities he's offering. With established artists, he positions himself as the solution to their specific problems and uses cultural connections to build trust quickly. With artists in crisis, he offers immediate relief and support while structuring long-term dependency. Once he's identified the vulnerability, Wack100 uses his street credibility as a trust-building and manipulation tool. This is perhaps the most insidious aspect of his operation. He weaponizes cultural identity and shared background to create business relationships that are anything but equitable. He doesn't present himself as just another industry executive trying to make money from artists' talent. Instead, he presents himself as someone who understands their world, someone who comes from the same environment, someone who has their back against an industry that doesn't respect or understand their culture. This cultural connection becomes the foundation for business relationship building and manipulation tool. This is perhaps the most insidious aspect of his operation. He weaponizes cultural identity and shared background to create business relationships that are anything but equitable. He doesn't present himself as just another industry executive trying to make money from artists' talent. Instead, he presents himself as someone who understands their world, someone who comes from the same environment, someone who has their back against an industry that doesn't respect or understand their culture. This cultural connection becomes the foundation for business relationships that are structured to benefit him at the artist's expense. Because the artists trust him based on cultural identity rather than business competence or ethical standards, they're less likely to scrutinize his contract terms or seek outside advice before signing agreements. The contracts themselves are masterpieces of predatory design. They're structured not just to extract large percentages of current earnings, but to create long-term dependency that makes leaving financially devastating. By taking percentages from multiple revenue streams, music sales, touring, merchandising, endorsements, appearances, Wack100 ensures that artists have to work constantly just to maintain their lifestyle. But the genius of his contract structure is that it creates a psychological trap as well as a financial one. Artists end up working harder and staying busier than they ever have before, which creates the illusion of success and progress. They're constantly performing, constantly recording, constantly promoting, constantly hustling. The activity level makes it seem like their careers are thriving, even though they're actually building less wealth than they would under fair management. The psychological manipulation is constant and sophisticated throughout the relationship, not just during the initial recruitment phase. Wack100 makes his artists feel like they're part of something bigger than just a business relationship. They're part of a family, a movement, a cultural phenomenon. He positions himself as their protector against an industry that doesn't understand or respect them, while simultaneously being the biggest threat to their financial security and career development. He also uses controversy and conflict generation as revenue streams. Whether it's exploiting Ray J's past relationships, creating media drama around his artists' personal lives, or using street politics to intimidate competitors, Wack100 understands that attention equals money in the entertainment industry. The fact that this attention might be negative or harmful to his artists' long-term careers is irrelevant to him. What matters is that controversy can be monetized through interviews, appearances, and media deals. The street credibility aspect of his operation is particularly powerful and dangerous because it taps into something deeper than just business relationships. For artists coming from certain backgrounds, having someone who understands their world and respects their history is incredibly valuable psychologically and culturally. Wack100 weaponizes this legitimate need for cultural understanding, using it to justify business practices that would be unacceptable in any other context. What makes Wack100's model so effective is that it exploits the very real problems that exist in the music industry while making those problems worse. Young artists do need guidance and protection from predatory contracts, but Wack100 offers them even more predatory contracts while making them feel protected. Artists do need managers who understand their cultural background, but Wack100 uses that cultural understanding to manipulate them more effectively. The financial mathematics of his deals are consistently structured to create what economists call debt peonage, a system where people work constantly but never build wealth because their earnings are systematically extracted by others. If an artist is giving up 70% of their earnings to Wack100, they need to generate significantly more revenue just to maintain the same lifestyle they could have had with fair management. This creates a cycle where they're always working, always hustling, always generating content and appearances, but never building the kind of wealth that would give them independence or security. The legal structure of his contracts makes escape extremely difficult and expensive. Entertainment law is complex and specialized, and challenging these contracts requires significant upfront investment in legal fees with no guarantee of success. For artists who are only keeping 30% of their earnings, accumulating the money needed for a serious legal challenge becomes nearly impossible. Wack100 also structures his deals to control multiple aspects of his artists' careers simultaneously. He's not just the label owner or just the manager, he's often both. Plus, he has involvement in booking, merchandising, and other revenue streams. This means that leaving him doesn't just mean finding a new manager or a new label. It means rebuilding an entire professional infrastructure from scratch while potentially facing legal challenges and industry retaliation. One of the most frequently asked questions about the Wack100 situation is how obviously intelligent and talented artists keep falling for what appear to be obviously predatory deals. The answer reveals uncomfortable truths about the music industry, the psychology of success and desperation, and the ways that cultural identity can be weaponized for financial exploitation. The first factor is the information asymmetry that exists between artists and industry professionals. Most artists, even successful ones, have limited understanding of how the music business actually works financially. They understand the creative process, they understand performance and promotion, but they often have very little knowledge about contract law, revenue streams, industry standards, or long-term wealth-building strategies. And this knowledge gap creates opportunities for people like Wack100 to position themselves as essential intermediaries while structuring deals that heavily favor their interests. When an artist doesn't understand what constitutes a fair deal, they can't recognize an unfair one. When they don't know industry standards, they can't tell when they're being offered terms that are far outside normal ranges. The second factor is the psychological impact of coming from environments where immediate survival often takes precedence over long-term planning. Many hip-hop artists come from backgrounds where financial security was never guaranteed, where opportunities were rare and had to be seized immediately, and where trusting the wrong person could have serious consequences. These survival instincts, which served them well in their original environments, can work against them in business situations. When someone like Wack100 offers immediate money, immediate lifestyle improvements, and immediate solutions to pressing problems, artists who have lived with scarcity and uncertainty may feel compelled to accept these offers even when the long-term terms are problematic. The psychological pressure of potentially missing out on a life-changing opportunity can override rational analysis of contract terms. The third factor is the way that Wack100 exploits cultural identity and shared background to build trust that bypasses normal business skepticism. When artists see someone who looks like them, talks like them, and comes from similar circumstances, they naturally assume that person has their best interests at heart. This cultural connection creates a psychological shortcut that allows Wack100 to build trust much faster than he could through traditional business relationship building. The fourth factor is the isolation that many artists experience once they achieve some level of success. As their careers develop, they often become separated from the friends, family members, and community connections that might normally provide advice and perspective on important decisions. They're surrounded by people who have financial interests in their success, making it difficult to get objective guidance about business decisions. Wack100 exploits this isolation by positioning himself as someone who understands their world and has their back, while simultaneously isolating them further from potential sources of independent advice. He discourages them from consulting lawyers, accountants, or other industry professionals who might identify the problems with his contract terms. The fifth factor is the way that success and wealth can create psychological vulnerabilities that didn't exist before. Artists who achieve sudden success often experience imposter syndrome, anxiety about maintaining their success, and pressure to make decisions quickly before opportunities disappear. These psychological states make them more susceptible to manipulation by people who present themselves as experienced guides who can help them navigate their new circumstances. Wack100 is skilled at identifying and exploiting these psychological vulnerabilities. He creates urgency around his offers, suggesting that opportunities are limited and time-sensitive. He positions himself as someone who can help them avoid the mistakes that other artists have made. He makes them feel like they need his expertise and connections to maintain their success. The sixth factor is the way that the modern music industry creates pressure for constant content creation and promotion. Artists feel like they need to be constantly working, constantly visible, constantly generating revenue to maintain their relevance. This pressure makes Wack100's promise of constant bookings and opportunities seem attractive, even when the financial terms are problematic. The seventh factor is the normalization of exploitation in certain segments of the hip-hop industry. Because predatory practices have become common, artists often assume that giving up large percentages of their earnings is just the cost of doing business. They don't realize that fair deals are possible because they've never seen examples of fair deals in their immediate environment. Wack100 benefits from and contributes to this normalization by presenting his predatory terms as industry standards. He makes artists feel like they should be grateful for the opportunities he's offering rather than questioning whether those opportunities come at too high a cost. The eighth factor is the way that social media and modern celebrity culture create pressure for lifestyle demonstration that can override financial common sense. Artists feel pressure to maintain certain appearances and lifestyles to preserve their image and credibility. When Wack100 offers immediate access to luxury cars, expensive jewelry, and high-end lifestyle elements, the psychological appeal can override rational analysis of the long-term costs. Understanding these psychological factors doesn't excuse the artist's decisions, but it does explain why intelligent, talented people keep falling for what appear to be obviously problematic deals. Wack100's success comes from his sophisticated understanding of these psychological vulnerabilities and his willingness to exploit them systematically for financial gain. While Wack100's individual actions are clearly predatory, his success couldn't exist without a broader industry ecosystem that enables, protects, and sometimes even celebrates this kind of exploitation. Understanding how he's been able to operate for years without serious consequences requires examining the structural problems in the music industry that make predatory behavior profitable and sustainable. The first enabling factor is the lack of industry-wide standards for management contracts and business practices. Unlike other industries that have professional associations, ethical guidelines, and regulatory oversight, the music management business operates with very few constraints on how managers can structure their relationships with artists. This creates an environment where predatory practices can flourish alongside legitimate business operations. The second enabling factor is the way that media coverage often celebrates financial success without examining the methods used to achieve that success. Wack100 has been featured in numerous interviews and articles that focus on his wealth and business acumen without seriously investigating how he's generated that wealth or what the costs have been for his artists. This kind of coverage legitimizes his methods and makes them seem like standard business practices rather than exploitation. The third enabling factor is the way that street credibility and cultural authenticity are often valued more highly than business ethics or professional competence in hip-hop culture. Because Wack100 can claim authentic street background and cultural understanding, his predatory business practices are sometimes overlooked or excused as just being street smart or understanding how the game works. The fourth enabling factor is the lack of accessible legal and financial education for artists entering the industry. Most artists don't have the knowledge or resources needed to properly evaluate contract terms or understand the long-term implications of the deals they're being offered. This information gap creates opportunities for predatory managers to exploit artists who don't know enough to protect themselves. The fifth enabling factor is the way that the modern music industry's focus on short-term profit extraction aligns with Wack100's methods. Record labels and other industry players are often more interested in maximizing immediate revenue than building sustainable careers for artists. This creates an environment where Wack100's aggressive extraction methods seem normal rather than problematic. The sixth enabling factor is the way that legal challenges to predatory contracts are expensive, time-consuming, and uncertain. Even when artists realize they're being exploited, the cost and complexity of legal action often makes it impractical to seek relief through the courts. This creates a situation where predatory managers can operate with relative impunity because their victims can't afford to challenge them effectively. When you step back and examine the full scope of Wack100's operation, what emerges is a systematic approach to wealth extraction that has made him millions while leaving a trail of financially damaged artists in his wake. The Blueface contract, the game situation, the Ray J controversies, and the numerous other cases that haven't been publicized, these aren't isolated incidents or business disputes. They're examples of a predatory business model that treats artists as revenue sources rather than creative partners or human beings deserving of fair treatment. The most disturbing aspect of Wack100's success is how he's managed to make systematic exploitation look like cultural empowerment and business expertise. He positions himself as the street-smart entrepreneur who understands hip-hop culture better than traditional industry executives, the protector who shields artists from corporate exploitation, the authentic voice who respects artists' backgrounds and identities. In reality, he's often the most exploitative person in their professional lives, extracting wealth more aggressively than any corporate executive while using cultural connections to justify practices that would be unacceptable in any other context. The artists who've worked with Wack100 have generated millions of dollars in revenue through their talent, creativity, and hard work. But most of that money has ended up in his bank accounts rather than theirs. They've worked harder, hustled more, and sacrificed more than they would have under fair management, but they have less wealth, less security, and less control over their careers to show for it. That's not success. That's exploitation with better marketing and cultural camouflage. The broader hip-hop community needs to recognize that street credibility, cultural understanding, and shared background don't justify predatory business practices. The same energy that goes into calling out major record labels for exploiting artists should be directed at managers and executives who use cultural connections to justify even worse treatment. Authenticity and cultural understanding are valuable, but they shouldn't be used as shields to protect financial predators from criticism and accountability. For young artists watching this and considering their own career decisions, the lessons are clear and urgent. No amount of street credibility, cultural connection, or lifestyle demonstration justifies signing away 70% of your earnings to anyone. No manager who truly has your best interests at heart would ask you to sign a contract without reading it, understanding it, or consulting independent legal counsel. No legitimate business relationship requires you to choose between your financial security and your cultural identity. The contracts that Wack100 offers aren't just bad deals. They're wealth extraction systems designed to keep artists working constantly while building minimal financial security for themselves. The lifestyle improvements and opportunities he offers come at costs that far exceed their value, creating cycles of dependency that can last for years or decades. Wack100's empire was built on the dreams, talent, and labor of artists who trusted him to guide their careers towards success and financial security. Instead, he guided their money into his own accounts while keeping them trapped in systems designed to benefit him at their expense. That's not management, that's not cultural understanding, and that's not business expertise. That's manipulation, exploitation, and financial predation wrapped in the language of street authenticity and cultural connection. The next time you see Wack100 talking about his success, his business acumen, or his understanding of hip-hop culture, remember that every dollar of his wealth came from artists who are working harder and earning less because they trusted someone who saw them as profit centers rather than people. That's the real story behind the millions, the real cost of his business model, and the real reason why this conversation matters for the future of hip-hop and the protection of artists who create the culture we all love. The hip-hop community has the power to change this dynamic by demanding better standards, supporting artists who speak out about exploitation, and refusing to celebrate wealth that's built on the systematic exploitation of creative talent. Until that happens, predators like Wack100 will continue to profit from the dreams and hard work of artists who deserve so much better than the deals they're being offered.